Hey guys, it's Miss Carmack here with the fractured fairy tale version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So hopefully you've already watched the original Snow White fairy tale in the YouTube video that I posted and the assignment. Even if you are already familiar with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, there could have been some key details that you had forgotten about, so it's always good to refresh your memory. So, once again, a fractured fairy tale is a twist on a classic fairy tale. Usually, in fractured fairy tales, it's told from a different perspective or point of view, or some of the characters have been changed. Sometimes, even the setting has been changed. So, in this version, seriously, Snow White was so forgetful. It's being told by the seven dwarfs. And you're going to notice some very big changes to this classic fairy tale, though some of the key plot points do stay the same. So, my kids in my class probably have seen a very similar book in my classroom library. It was called Seriously, Cinderella Was So Annoying. And this is the same author. She actually has a whole series of books like this. They are all hilarious. I encourage you to check them out. So, with that, let's read Seriously, Snow White Was So Forgetful. The story of Snow White as told by the dwarfs. I love Snow White dearly. She's a beautiful person, inside and out. But honestly, the girl's got a mind like a leaky bucket. This was a simile. He's comparing Snow White's mind to a leaky bucket. Instead of the bucket leaking water, he probably means her brain is leaking her memories. Here's the real story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. My name, by the way, is Seven. We dwarves used to have real names, but Snow White couldn't remember them. One day, we came home from the mines to find our cottage door open. We thought we'd been burgled. Burgled? What kind of word is that? Well, it's similar to the word burglar, someone who robs houses. So I'm thinking this probably means they thought that their cottage had been robbed. But no, it was just a lovely little girl, sound asleep. There she is. In the morning, she had quite a story to tell. Hello, she said. I'm Snow White. The queen sent me into the woods and a hunter was supposed to kill me. But he was nice and let me go, and I wandered a long time in the woods. I guess I'm very pretty, and that's why the queen doesn't like me. I'm Snow White. Would it be alright if I lived with you? I love playing house, and keeping house for real wouldn't be all that different, would it? Did I tell you my name is Snow White? Wow, did she have energy. Life with Snow White was interesting. She'd forget to turn on the stove. She'd forget to turn it off. She'd make banana cream pie and forget the bananas. She knit scarves that were 10 feet long just because she forgot to stop. On the bright side, she laughed at all of our jokes, and she never complained about anything. Years passed. Snow White grew up, but she didn't really change. She remained her sweet, charming, forgetful self. Then one day, Five heard a rumor. The queen knows Snow White is alive, he told us. The magic mirror spilled the beans. Oh, that's another example of figurative language. In this case, it's an idiom. Magic mirror didn't really spill beans. It just means that the magic mirror spilled a secret. We gave Snow White orders to stay inside the cottage. She was not to open the door to anyone. We knew the evil queen would try to hurt her. But Snow White quickly forgot. Twice we came home to find her lying on the floor. It was clearly the work of the queen. The first time, Snow White couldn't breathe. She was wearing a brand new corset that was laced too tightly. The second time, she had a poisoned comb in her hair. All the queen had to do was dress up as an old woman and offer something pretty for sale. Any thoughts of being careful went right out of Snow White's head. We posted reminders. We even wrote, "Do not open the door," in syrup on her pancakes. Look at this. So many reminders. But once again, we came home to find Snow White on the floor. This time, we couldn't help her. There was no corset to loosen or comb to remove. We thought she was dead, killed by a magical spell, and yet days passed, and she remained as lovely as ever. "It's like she's forgotten how to wake up," Five whispered. We couldn't make ourselves bury her, so we placed Snow White in a glass coffin and brought her to a spot on the mountainside. We took turns guarding her. Thank goodness that's not the end of the story. One day, I heard voices in the woods. Sorry. "No, Your Majesty, it's not time for lunch. We ate our lunch an hour ago. Don't you remember?" "All right, silly me." Suddenly, I was face to face with the prince. Oops. But he barely noticed me. He couldn't take his eyes off Snow White. "What happened to her?" he asked. "What's her name?" I told him the whole story. "She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen," he breathed. "Those lips, those eyes. What did you say her name was? Could I take her with me? Now that I've seen her, I don't think I can live without her. What silky hair she has. Tell me, again, what's her name?" I smiled. The prince reminded me of a certain someone. No, I wonder who. We were bringing Snow White back to the cottage so the other dwarfs could say goodbye. Without warning, the prince stopped and turned around. "Hey, what about lunch?" he asked. The servant slipped. The coffin slid, and Snow White coughed. I never heard such a beautiful sound. Out of her throat flew a bit of rosy red apple. Rosy red, poisoned apple, that is. She sat up. "Did someone say something about lunch?" she asked. Yes, Snow White married the prince, of course. The queen actually showed up at the reception, if you can believe it. Everyone threw dinner rolls at her and booed so loudly that she ran away and was never heard from again. Things are pretty much back to normal now. When it gets cold outside, we are grateful for our 10-foot scarves. And every once in a while, we make banana cream pie without any bananas, just for old time's sake. That's the end of the story. Here's some things to think about. Fairy tales have been around a long time and often have many different versions. What version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs do you know best? And how is it different from this one? How is it the same? So, couple things to think about with this version of the story versus the original. So make sure you answer those questions in the assignment, and thank you for listening to this version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.